I was married to my first wife for about 9.5 years when I joined the local sheriff's office as a deputy. I was attending the academy, and I was at home more often than usual, as classes were only from 8 to 5 during the week. I finished the academy and returned to shift work at the local jail. It was night shift, 12-hour shifts. 2 months later, I got a weird feeling that something wasn't right. My wife kept spending time with the pastor's wife, sewing and crafting. I was off duty and had to change my sleep schedule. I'd go to bed with my wife but couldn't sleep. I went to the restroom and saw a text on her phone at midnight. It was the pastor. Thinking it must have been an emergency, I picked it up and read it. It read, "Good night, my love." I was floored. I tried to find other texts, but she had deleted them. If it was innocent, the older texts would have been saved. I woke her up at 1 to ask what the hell was going on. She basically said it must be a typo and asked why I was snooping. She turned the tables on me and got defensive, kicking me out of our bedroom for a month and a half. I thought I had screwed up. I was so stressed, I lost 35 pounds in a month. I couldn't eat or sleep a real basket case. I got us counseling as recommended by the pastor. She had me apologizing to him for even thinking that anything was going on between them. She wouldn't talk to a counselor except for quoting Bible verses. She tried to play the holier-than-thou card. After a month and a half of this, I saw her diary out and unguarded. She had been so guarded with it in her phone since it all hit the fan. I read how she and him were in love and had to sneak around to be together and that his wife knew. I calmly went to her and said, "You were right for hiding your diary from me. I just read it." Her jaw hit the floor. Suddenly she got all apologetic. She said, "I never meant it to go this far. I never meant to hurt you. Call him now. I want to talk to him." She called, and I demanded to meet him in the morning. I did, at a local fast food restaurant. I walked in with my phone in my pocket on record. I recorded our conversation, which is legal where I live. He admitted to the inappropriate relationship. He was such a hypocrite. He regularly preached against infidelity and how he wouldn't counsel a woman alone due to people thinking the wrong thing. I let him speak enough to give me evidence. I was livid. The hardest thing I ever had to do was try even harder to keep my marriage together, but I'm pretty sure the cheating continued. I moved out to keep my job safe, so there wouldn't be any way she could lie and try to start a domestic violence issue, and I'd lose my job. People at church asked her where I was for weeks. She lied and said I was working. They contacted me, and I wouldn't lie to them. It took a while, but it all came out, and he left the church he founded 25 years ago and started working in fast food in his mid-60s. It took years for me to finally get over it, but it's messed me up as far as trusting people, especially preachers. I am posting this not to be malicious, just sharing for others to read, and hope it helps in some way for others going through the same story. Number 2. Her life crumbles, whilst mine has never been better. I, a 25-year-old male, was dating my ex-girlfriend, let's call her Jess, a 24-year-old female, for 4.5 years. We met at university as she was in my business management class. We got put together on a huge project for the semester, and we just sort of clicked. After we finished the project, I asked her out, and she said yes. Those first few years together were absolute bliss. We were all lovey-dovey with each other, and overall everything just felt right between us. We rarely argued, and we never got into fights. We communicated clearly and openly with each other. I really thought she was the one that I was going to spend the rest of my life with. Hell, I was saving up to buy her a ring, but here I am. During the last half year of our relationship, she began to grow distant and was constantly making excuses for why we couldn't hang out together as much. Both of us, of course, were out of university and had begun working full-time jobs, so I thought this was normal. Note, we never were living together. But then, soon enough, she was starting to turn down intimacy. For some background info, me and her have very high libidos. We normally would go at it at least once a day. I always wore protection, and she was on the pill because neither of us was ready to have kids. One night, we decided to spend the night at her place. I tried to initiate intimacy, and of course, she turned it down. This was really beginning to piss me off, and I voiced my frustrations to her. But she just said that she wasn't feeling comfortable with her body at the time and asked me to give her some space when it came to initiating intimacy. I agreed, and we both went to bed, or at least she did. I just had this gut feeling in my stomach that something was off, and I went to snoop on her phone once I knew she was asleep. Yeah, I know this is bad, but I don't regret it one bit. I found out that she was hooking up with her serious cheating ex. I found messages, pictures, and full-blown videos of them making out. The videos freaking killed me. In those videos, she was acting and saying things that really made me look at her as nothing more than a waste of space and a hole. At that very moment, all I could feel was hatred towards her. I looked down at her as she was sleeping, and all I could feel was visceral disgust. I then took screenshots of all the messages and sent them to me, including the other pics she sent him, not the videos, though, as I couldn't bear to send those. I quietly took whatever belongings I still had at her apartment and took them out to my car, then went back to my apartment. In the morning, she called me and asked me where I was, and I just gave her a quick, believable excuse, and she bought it. Now, here is some background info. Let me introduce you to one of my close childhood friends. Let's call her Julia, a 21-year-old female. Julia and I were really close throughout our childhood, through high school, and her brother is my best friend. They live a block away from my parents' home, where I grew up. Now, about a year after me and Jess got together, I returned to my hometown for my cousin's wedding and began hanging out with my old friends, including Julia and her brother. During that night, she confessed that she had feelings for me. I turned her down and told her that I already had a girlfriend. She was very understanding and apologized, and after that, we didn't really talk as much. I didn't want to give her any indications that I was interested in a relationship with her since I was dating Jess. She was fine with this and understood it with no issues at all. She doesn't use social media, so the only way we would talk is over messages. During that time, I took a lot of photos of all of us hanging out with each other. Again, I went back to university about a week later, and I showed Jess where I was and who I was with, as she was interested in seeing who I hung out with during my trip. Whilst we were scrolling through images, a picture of me and Julia popped up, and she began to ask questions about her and who she was. I already explained to her that she was a childhood friend of mine, and during the trip she confessed feelings for me, but I shot her down. I showed her the text messages to back it up, and overall, she seemed fine with that. About a year later, during a little argument we had, she confessed to me that she was very insecure about her body, that she grew very insecure after seeing pictures of Julia because Julia had a very slim figure and looked gorgeous. I did my best to calm her fears, but I think in the end, she never really got over that. Now, back to the story. I messaged my parents back in my hometown and asked them if I could stay at their place for the upcoming week, as I have some important things to discuss with them. They were worried, but agreed. I've been telling Jess that I was going down to see my parents, as I haven't seen them in a while. I wanted to visit them, and she didn't bat an eyelid at that. I went to work and met with my boss and explained the entire situation. I asked for a little break, and he told me to take as much time as I need and come back when I am ready. I went on my way down there during the weekend and told my parents everything. They were truly disgusted with her actions, and my mom told me that if I ever took her back, she would not be allowed at their house ever. I told my mom not to worry. I had enough self-dignity to not ever take her back. I then messaged Julia and asked if she and I could talk. I explained everything I found out about Jess. I don't know what happened, but I think at that very moment, everything kind of hit me, and I began to cry profusely, not only because I lost someone I loved, but also because of the fact that I wasted so much time on her and would never get that time back. Julia was there to console me throughout my entire breakdown. After a little while, I calmed down. She brought out some drinks, and we just drank, watched movies, and played Mario Kart till about 2 a.m. At this point, we were both quite tipsy, to say the least, and I couldn't really go back to my parents' place. She offered me to stay the night, and I did. We went to a room, and one thing led to another, and we were making out on her bed. Just before we took off our clothes, she told me to take out my phone and start recording. As you can probably guess, we did the deed quite a few times that night. The entire time we were doing it, Julia was yelling out derogatory things about Jess like, "This hell thing is so much tighter than that filthy woman," stuff like that. After our last go, I stopped recording, and we went to bed. I woke up the next day to the smell of her making breakfast, and we ate together. I asked her why she wanted me to record what we did last night, and she said that she wanted to help me get some payback. I never once mentioned getting revenge on Jess, but I guess Julia knows me pretty well and knows that I would want to get some revenge just for treating me this way. She told me to just send her the audio file from the recording and break up with her. She told me that she still has feelings for me and will wait for me to sort everything out with Jess. I told her I couldn't promise her anything, and she said that was fine. She just wanted me to know. After that, we said our goodbyes and I went back to my parents' home. They were kind of worried, asking where I was last night. I told them that, and Julia were just catching up. My parents were relieved, but as my parents got ready for work, my dad had a small smirk on his face. I went onto my computer and downloaded the video from my phone, then edited the video to just audio and a black screen. Once that was done, I spent the rest of the weekend with my friends, partying and having fun. I also spent a lot of time with Julia, and maybe had intercourse a few times as well this time. No recording. I informed my boss that I would be returning to work in about a week, and he said that was perfectly fine. I then texted Jess that I knew she was hooking up with her ex and sent all the screenshots. My last message to her ever was, "Treat me like a game and I will show you how it's played." And I attached the audio of me and Julia having sex, then blocked her. Over the next few days, I was getting spam calls and spam messages from a bunch of our mutual friends and her family. I sent them all the screenshots of the text messages I had, and it was radio silence for the most part after that. Her parents called me and apologized for their daughter's behavior, and that was that. Where I am now, about 1 year later, I just had my 26th birthday with my family and girlfriend of close to 1 year, Julia. I recently got a promotion at work, and Julia just moved in with me. She is going to graduate in a little over a week from now. She transferred over to the university I went to for her final year. I have a constant workout schedule. I am now 5'11" and 165 pounds. I was always pretty skinny while I was growing up. I have never felt more proud of myself, and I feel genuinely cared for in ways that I have never felt before. Now, for my ex, a friend told me that apparently she went through a huge crisis after I dumped her. She found out she was pregnant, and her ex, who knocked her up, apparently ghosted her. I couldn't be the dad because I never went raw on her. She had an abortion, and her life has been a mess ever since. She has an alcohol addiction, and thanks to the video I sent her, she now has huge body insecurity issues that have ruined most of, if not all, her relationships since. For her, I am the one that got away, and for me, she is the largest bullet I ever dodged. I still despise her because those 2.5 years we spent together are lost, and I can never get them back. But I am living my best life, and I couldn't be happier. My one piece of advice to anyone who has been cheated on is never to settle for someone who doesn't respect you. The world is your oyster. Go out and live your best life. Just before you go, please take a moment to subscribe to my channel. It only takes one click of a button. Thank you so much.